Hey guys, thanks for coming back. Today I've got another interview. It's a little bit different, something I haven't really covered too much on this channel. Um, Today I have with me Venger Satanis of Core. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. Is it Kort'thalis Publishing, or how do you say that exactly?
I pronounce it Kort'thalis.
Okay. I know it's of a different language that
Yeah,
the human mouth cannot replicate the sounds, but
not easily, no.
yeah, yeah, and he's published several tabletop RPG products, some complete games, modules. Uh, you've done tables, all kinds of resources for GMs and players
That's
and
right. Truly
writers,
unique
and
expansions. It's
yeah,
so many things.
a lot of stuff. And I've actually been following you for a very, very long time, probably since you pretty much started YouTube, because I was always watching um, the YouTube RPG Brigade,
Hmm.
which I don't really think exists anymore. Maybe loosely. I think there's still a Facebook group that goes on, but
Yeah,
a lot of those guys either aren't really doing content or it's very sporadic. Like Samwise RPG, Tower Guard DM, who unfortunately deleted his whole channel.
mhm.
The Gentleman Gamer, who still does some stuff occasionally. Hammered Shitface, a whole there are all those really old school guys from the YouTube RPG Brigade. If you guys kind of don't know what I'm talking about, this was like before the Matt Colvilles and the Matt Mercers, and
Right.
it was basically a group of regular guys who just had their phone or webcam and just talked about mostly the OSR. Um, yeah, and you were one of them that was doing pretty kind of regularly doing content, I'd say, correct?
Yeah. On YouTube? Or you mean
Yeah,
like public
YouTube. Yeah,
stuff?
YouTube. And then well then there's also the blogosphere, that
Yeah.
also exists that you were doing content for too. Were
Right.
you Did you do the videos first or did you have your blog first?
Well, I started doing videos before the RPG stuff with like Cthulhu and Lovecraft, and the occult and things like that. So I had a channel that was pretty big for a while, and then I stupidly uh, opened and then did whatever the email said to like log into your account or whatever. So I got hacked or phished or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I don't know how serious it was, but the douchebag that hacked my channel demanded some stupid ransom. Like you either have to pay X amount of dollars or you have to do a video where you're like on your knees and like, please, my lord, like give me my channel back, or I don't know. It was like some more involved thing than that. I was just like, no, fuck you. I'll start a new channel. So then I started a new channel, and then shortly after my first child was born, I decided to kind of like not shut down, but back away a little bit from like a lot of the goings on with the Cthulhu cult, and I'll always be a fan of Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos, but the day to day operation of an international like religious organization that calls itself a cult, I thought maybe I'll take a step back from that and then focus on other things, especially since if people focus like it's great to have like a religious center or values and things like that, but if all you have is just religion and that's like your entire identity and what you do online and stuff like that, that just seems kind of hollow and empty, at least for me. So I wanted to take the kind of things that I had learned and was practicing and put them in something more concrete, which was the role playing game stuff, which I've always loved since I was like 10 years old and first got D&D and got into it. And so then I kind of switched gears and then started making videos and blog posts about role playing games. And occasionally I would drift into the esoteric things of the occult or magic, or get into weeds with Lovecraft and stuff like that. But mostly it was just role playing game stuff, D&D, and my own systems, and just things I grew up with and loved, and fantasy, horror, science fiction, all that stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how you first got into like role playing games. Was it like D&D? Like what edition? Like what was the initial like spark for you?
My aunt gave me and my cousin D&D gifts. I got the Errol Otis covered Tom Oldboy magenta box basic D&D set when I was like 10. And then my cousin got like a couple adventures, I think, or a hardcover book, or he got some other D&D stuff. And together we kind of like sort of we read it and looked at the pictures and we were like, oh, this looks so awesome. We didn't really know how to play because we didn't know anybody at that time. And so we kind of like talked like, oh, and then our guys do this, and then we go to the mountaintop, and I guess we win. We fight the dragon, and we win. Then we didn't really know how to play because, I was 10. I didn't do a thorough reading. I'd never played before. But soon after, I found other people that had played Dungeons and Dragons, and then of course it immediately clicked, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Even though my character kept dying in this one adventure. Just me and the DM. I was just playing this fighter, and I would die, and I would keep re-rolling pretty much the same character. Like this human fighter, and I would just keep going until I got lucky, and then I finished the first few encounters. I survived, and then after that, that character just kept leveling and growing in power and accumulating wealth, and that was my first like real successful character where I felt like, okay, this is going somewhere beyond just trying the game out, or one shot status. I played that character for a while, so that was cool.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned not really like knowing how to play, because the way I got into it is somehow, I don't remember how, but I found my father's first edition books that he had from when he was in high school.
Wow.
And he he would run a game for me and my brother, but the way he would DM it is he would just use the tables in the back of the book, like the randomly generated tables, and that was the way he would just roll it, be like, okay, there's some bushes or whatever would come up on the next hex. And so I never really fully like understood how to play, like really, until I think I bought like maybe the third edition Dungeon Master's Guide or something, whatever was out at that time. And then that was when I finally realized, like, this isn't really how you play. You have to, there's more storytelling going on than just kind of like randomly generated video game approach, I guess, that we had. So I know you do a lot of kind of your wheelhouse, I guess, is OSR, or you kind of coined the O5R name. So did you continue to like buy the new editions as they came out, or have you always stuck with the old school?
Just after my introduction with the BX D&D, I would buy like the hardcover books at like Walden Books and KB Toys at the mall, and I would play with friends in grade school, and then in high school was second edition and played a lot of that with high school friends. And then somewhere in my college years, drifted away for a little bit. But then with third edition, I came back and I was like, oh, this is still cool. It was different enough where I was like, maybe in the back of my mind, I was thinking, may not be as cool in some regards as in my youth. I was like, that's still pretty cool. And I liked all the little fiddly bits and the character optimization. And I just kind of like jumped on the bandwagon because it was new and shiny. And
words I was about to use exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then fourth edition came along. It was like, well, I'll try that too. It's got to be D&D, and part of me was probably like, new is better, so let's do this. And then I tried it out, and it was just like, I'm just not feeling it. And I almost was like, maybe I've just outgrown Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games altogether. So maybe I'll just find other stuff to do, and role-playing games was cool, like comic books was in my, when I was a kid. And now I'm just kind of like done with it. But I thought, and then I heard about like the OSR and Dungeons & Call Classics, and that D&D 5th edition was going to come out soon. And there were some previews for that. I'm like, well, maybe I'll give Dungeons and Dragons another try, and then we'll see what happens. But this time I'll go more old school and see what it's like running the game from that perspective and that kind of play style. And I wrote something for it, which eventually became Liberation of the Demon Slayer, which is my first module for the old school Renaissance. And that campaign turned out great. I kind of fell in love with D&D again and role-playing games in general. And from that moment on, I was really into it again and never looked back, and was just like angry to some degree with 4th edition and new school concepts that I thought had ruined D&D. But then, 5th edition came out, and that was a little bit more old school, but with still some other stuff like in 2nd edition, like character kits and things like that. So it was a nice happy middle ground, and I ran a lot of 5th edition D&D until I wanted something a little bit more old school than that. And so I kind of went back to, Swords and Wizardry and Labyrinth Lord and DCC and Astonishing Sorcerers and Swordsmen of Hyperborea or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hyperborea. And then finally, as of like a couple years ago, my own D&D Heartbreaker, like old school version, Crimson Dragon Slayer, I kind of evolved that to a nice rules light hack of both old school D&D and 5th edition. It's like basic D&D, but with ascending armor class, and I use a lot of advantage and disadvantage rather than a whole bunch of weird bonuses and penalties. And I mean, it's really, it's like 10 pages, like the whole role-playing game, and that includes character creation and all that. So, and it's totally compatible with pretty much any version of D&D. And so when I role-play online, like Roll20, when I run games, I just use Crimson Dragon Slayer D20. Crimson Dragon Slayer started originally with my own house system with like D6 dice pools, which now that years have passed, I kind of realized that maybe I was reinventing the wheel, but making it not round, but with like an octagon. And maybe that wasn't the best solution after all. However, that D6 dice pool system, I think, works great with something like Alpha Blue, which isn't supposed to be a knockoff of D&D mechanics. it's its own thing. And so with Delpha Blue, I love the D6 dice pools, and I don't really want to change that. But with the Crimson Dragon Slayer, I realized it should be more in line with regular D&D mechanics. If I'm going to use it on a daily basis, and if it's going to be a little bit more popular and accessible for people, especially when I'm designing role-playing scenarios with that in mind, stuff that I'm going to play test and that I'm going to bring out there and run for people, at game stores or at conventions, things like that, then it'd be nice to have a unified, more like D&D system. So that's where the D20 came in of Crimson Dragon Slayer D20.
Yeah, I think going back a little bit, it was 4th edition. I think they even came out and kind of said that they kind of made that system to appeal to more video game. Right. I think was kind of the exact terms that they used to play. And I've always kind of, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but I've always kind of felt that 4th edition is what led to the rise of all these OSR and the success of Pathfinder and all those things. Because if 4th edition had been really good and people really enjoyed it, they wouldn't go looking for these other games to, go to, necessarily. And by the time 5th edition had come around, all those other games had already, blew up pretty much, you mentioned DCC, and the way your modules are and your writing, it kind of seems like DCC would be a game that you really like just because it's so gonzo. Like, I love the magic system, like the deformities and the exploding like spells, like like all that stuff's, it's a lot of fun, but I've always found it kind of tedious sometimes.
Yeah, you can really see the roots of third and 3.5 D&D in there with like the saving throws, and then I mean, I love DCC, but it's not
streamlined.
It doesn't feel like home to me. You know what? I'm actually going to quote one of my favorite movies growing up, probably still one of my favorites, Weird Science. We're at the end. He's talking to this girl. He's like, Lisa is everything I wanted in a woman before I knew what I wanted. And now that I know what I want, if I had to run one game for the rest of my life, one system that's fantasy, it would be Dungeon Crawl, or no, it would be Crimson Dragon Slayer D20, because that just feels right to me. But back in the beginning, yeah, DCC was a huge influence, and it was just like, this is everything I want, when you see the swimsuit model on the magazine cover, you're like, that's what I want to end up with when I'm like, 30 or 35 or something like that. But that's, then when you get to that age, that's not the woman you end up marrying, or dating in a long-term situation. Anyway, I'm getting off track, but yeah, DCC has a lot of great things. It's not perfect for me. There's just a few things that, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way, or I'm just not in love with. But I definitely think there's a lot of things to love about that game, and it's definitely influenced me and what I like, especially since DCC, the tone is very gonzo and kind of freewheeling, and they mix science fiction with fantasy a lot, which I love. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about that book is the artwork.
Yeah.
I think if you're any kind of gamer, like, that book is worth picking up just for the art, really, in my opinion. I think one of my I wouldn't say major, but one of my problems with that book is it's like this big.
Yeah, it's huge.
I don't like having that many rules to go through. It's like you said, like with Crimson Dragon Slayer, it's like 10 pages. It's not very long at all.
Yeah.
Like that's really all you need.
Right.
I've never been a fan of like skills or feats, because to me it's like one of those things where people always, they get into a situation and they look at their sheet and they're like, what skill can I use to get out of this situation?
Right.
Oh, I don't have that skill, so I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather people look at the situation and say, hey, I want to jump on this chandelier and stab him in the head, something crazy, just
Yeah.
leave it completely open to the players to decide, you know, I can do whatever I want, just kind
Yeah.
of roll,
If I was gonna sit down with a big group for several hours, and it was going to be a weekly thing in person, yeah, I might want it like for an extended campaign. I might want something a little more robust, something a little bit more substantial. But for the last few years, and probably the next few years on, it's all about playing here and there with established friends, or playing online with people I don't know for an hour or two. And, if I play a monthly game in person, eventually, that would be great. So, yeah, the pickup games and the one shots and things where I don't want to have to explain a lot of rules to noobs, or it's me and my friends that I've been playing with for years and years, and we don't need a lot of rules in between us. We kind of just start playing the game that's kind of like in our head or whatever. And so for that, Crimson Dragon Slayer works great for me. But yeah, if I was going to sit down and like, this is a long campaign, it's going to be at least 20 sessions. We're going to play every week, for 4 hours at a time or something like that. And I had like a big group of like 6 to 8 players, and some people had moderate knowledge, and they wanted to play like an established like fifth edition or DCC or something like that. Then maybe I'd go that route. But if I'm just going to play here and there with people I know very well or people I don't know at all, I like something very simple and rules light, where, yeah, you don't have to explain things. Yeah, it's just easier for me.
Yeah, so what I was going to ask about your the first book that you wrote, which one was it? It wasn't Islands. What was the first
Oh,
mountain?
Liberation of the Demon Slayer.
Yeah, Liberation of the Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
Now, I know with a lot of times with musicians, it's
Mm-hmm.
like their first album, they have like all this, everything that they've gone through up until this moment. This is their everything distilled into what they want. Did
Yeah.
you feel that way with that? Or like, was this like your best ideas that you had come up with at that point that you made into this book, or was it just kind of something that happened?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always feel like I've got to put sort of everything I can. Like when an idea comes to me, and I'm in the middle of writing a particular thing, then I will usually incorporate that idea into it somehow, unless it doesn't fit at all. Um, and I'll try to both keep one upping myself and try to include everything awesome that I can, because I don't know. Yeah, at that point, I was like, I might only get one shot at this. So, if I leave something good on the cutting room floor, that just might be it for me. Or the back of my mind, I always think like, what if, I don't know, a meteor strikes my house, and kills me or something like that. And then I never had the chance to include that cool magic item or NPC or new spell or cool encounter. So yeah, I always want to put as much as I can into something. And yeah, the first one, like a lot of albums, it's maybe not as polished. It's a little shaky, but it's got a lot of raw energy and intensity, and I just kind of went for it. In fact, Metallica growing up was probably one of my favorite band. And I always had a special I loved most of their albums, pretty much everything up until the Black Album, which was kind of hit or miss for me. But I always had a special fondness for Kill 'Em All because that was their first one, and it just felt like more, I don't know, just brutal and uh, I don't know, passionate. And the other stuff, their later Metallica's later stuff is obviously more refined and like tight and uh, can go to some amazing places. But there's just something about the black leather with the spikes and the studs and just like screaming and just like thrashing out. And yeah, that's kind of the intensity I guess I had with Liberation of the Demon Slayer. And some people like that best, maybe, or the follow up one, which is, as you mentioned, the Islands of Purple Haunted Putrescence.
Mm-hmm.
That's got a lot of raw stuff too. But yeah, I think I answered the question.
Yeah, it's like you said, you have a lot of kind of Lovecraftian influences and a lot of grindhouse, I guess, in there too.
Right.
Before you're writing any module or rule set, like where do you get a lot of that inspiration from? Like I know you've said this before, but you have I heard a pretty substantial movie collection. I don't know if that goes into. I as well have a ridiculous movie collection. I think mine steers more towards horror, but yeah, I was wondering if a lot of that inspiration comes from the movies or.
Yeah, a lot comes from movies. I try to read, and I've read some things, but when it comes to most nerds and geeks that I've discovered talking to people throughout my life, I'm kind of on the low end of the reading spectrum.
I am too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, movies, definitely movies. I was blessed with a household that had HBO in the 80s. And so I would be constantly watching Star Wars, Beastmaster, Ice Pirates, Clash of the Titans, a lot of like crappy sci-fi movies, just Excalibur, Conan.
I love Excalibur.
Yeah,
Excalibur's one of my
there's
favorites.
so many things, like over and over again. So not only would I get to watch like basically a new movie or two every couple months, just the way they rotated them on HBO back then. But when they would play a movie like Beastmaster, they'd play it over and over again. So every day, if I wanted to, I could watch the Beastmaster every single day for like a month. And so I got to do that. And so a lot of these movies were just kind of like burned and implanted and branded into my brain. And so when I just like close my eyes or whatever and like try to imagine something, it's easiest for me to imagine something like coming from a movie, Flash Gordon, stuff like that. So I'll incorporate all the stuff from the movies and other D&D campaigns, and I'll take things that I've read and then I'll tweak them and kind of make them my own and then put them in there in my stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm much more a audio visual person as well. I try to read and I can read a little bit here and there if it's because I just get bored pretty quickly. There's only a few things that I've read. Like I read Stephen King's Pet Sematary pretty fast because I love that movie. But I'm curious, do you have a favorite Lovecraft movie?
Favorite Lovecraft movie? Let's see.
Or let's say Lovecraftian, because Lovecraft movie is pretty limited.
Yeah. I could probably do like a top 5, maybe. if right now there was a gun to my head and it was like you gotta pick one, maybe The Thing, like the original, I think 1982, The Thing by John Carpenter.
Mhm.
Close with that I would call Lovecraftian would be Prince of Darkness. I also love his In the Mouth of Madness. So, I mean, those are 3 John Carpenter movies that are, Lovecraft as fuck right there. That I'm super into. I love Stuart Gordon and his approach.
Mhm.
So Reanimator, Bride of Reanimator, From Beyond. Is it From Beyond or just
From Beyond? It's From Beyond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get the title of that and the Lucio Fulci
Beyond.
movie,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is another one. I love that 70s kind of weird Italian
Mm-hmm.
Lovecraft influenced. Sometimes more giallo, sometimes it's more exploitation horror stuff. Dagon, that was really good.
With Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah. Wait, what? I think Dagon. I think that was the point where Jeffrey.
Oh no, that was the guy that looked like Jeffrey Combs. I think that was the guy that looked like Jeffrey Combs. Yeah.
That was very similar to Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It looks just like Jeffrey Combs, but it's not him.
I want to say his either first or last name was Ezra. Something. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
He's only been in like a couple movies that I've seen, but Dagon was one of them. I like that. The Dunwich Horror, like the old one, is pretty cool. And another favorite of mine stars Vincent Price, and The Haunted Palace. Now, the Haunted Palace, it gets its name from like an Edgar Allan Poe poem, I think. But the story is pretty much the case of Charles Dexter Ward. So that's why that's awesome. Vincent Price is just super cool. But to mix that with like a Lovecraft and then that type of movie where it's like sort of Hammer, but it's like old British period piece kind of.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So yeah, I guess those would be my faves.
Yeah, I think some of my favorites were you didn't mention this, but The Mist, the movie.
Okay.
I love that movie, like the visuals, especially the ending. The ending is so brutal.
Yeah.
And I love that shot of there's the mist, and then all you see is that creature walking. I love that shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool Lovecraftian stuff. That kind of is reminiscent of like Cloverfield.
Yeah, it is actually
like weird giant Lovecraftian creature that you never really see all of. Maybe you just hear it more than you see it, and it's just like lurking in the shadows or the mist or somewhere off in the darkness, and you're just like, ah. Yeah, I mean, it's creepy. Sometimes I'll think about the ending of The Mist, and I'll just be like talking to myself, kind of in my head, like, Venger, like, don't be stupid and do something precipitous that maybe you should like hang back and think about this more, or like don't jump the gun or don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, chill a moment, and or if I'm nervous about something, maybe I'll be like telling myself, Venger, things will work out in the end. Don't stress about it too much. Just take a deep breath, chill out. A lot of times things take care of themselves, or you'll think of something down the road. Don't worry about it. Just try to calm myself down. But yeah, I'll use that because I'll think about that because it's so fucking horrible.
It is. It's so brutal. It's like, I mean, it's a very sad, depressing ending, but it's still probably one of my favorite endings to a movie.
Yeah.
Which sounds weird to say, but
yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like about The Thing is that it's got this weird. Obviously, it's not as brutal, but it's got this weird downbeat kind of ambiguous ending, where you don't really know where it's going. Like, is that the end? Or is it possible there could be like a light at the end of the tunnel? Probably not. It's probably just darkness and maybe some really bad shit like down the road off camera. But at the same time, you don't know. And that's kind of cool. I mean, the whole unknown can be terrifying.
And then, I mean, the special effects in that movie, I think Rob Bottin.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
I've told a few people this. I mean, some people listening might already know because I've shared it a bunch of times, but not everybody knows everything. Not everybody has listened in on every conversation I've had in my life. So when I was pretty young, and this was right in the 80s. So it's probably right around the same time I got into D&D, like 10 years old. I'll just use that as an age because I don't really know. But I was flipping around. I remember I was in the living room flipping around on the TV with the remote, and my dad was kind of in the background reading the paper or doing something, sitting on the couch. And I was flipping around, and I probably got to HBO or something. And there's this movie, and it looked cool, kind of. I just tuned in just randomly, and this guy was giving this other guy CPR. I'm like, oh, okay, what's this about? And then this is the thing, and then he was like, clear, and then as you probably know, his hands went down, like through it, and then like oh, it's like bloody stumps, and then the slime and the horror and tentacles, and at the time I was like, as a child, I was like frozen, like with kind of fear and fascination, and it wasn't until it was kind of like over that I was able to, like, I guess, turn it off or change the channel. And I looked back at my dad, I was like, what was that? I don't even know what his response was because it was so long ago, but it freaked me out. And then later on, probably years later, I like watched it and I'm like, this is so awesome, because that's the difference between when you're 10 and when you're like 14, 15 is perspective. So yeah, that was my first introduction to the thing, was that scene, and that's lived with me to this day. So, and I love that movie. It's probably my favorite movie of all time. Although it's so hard to say because I love. Then what happens to Star Wars then? Is that just like relegated to like number 2 or? And heavy metal and like The Godfather. I mean, there's so many movies that I love, and I don't know if I can be like, this is my number 1 movie. And Evil Dead, and Evil Dead 2. So
Army of Darkness, like the list goes. I'm the same way. Yeah, it's like,
although Army of Darkness, the first time I saw it in the theater, I was like, what the hell is this crap? I didn't get it. I'll be honest with you, that's probably going to make people lame.
The pitchforks.
And back in high school, I was lame, I guess. I think that's before I saw Evil Dead.
It's the slapstick Three Stooges humor throughout the movie.
And I was just like, this is like so disconnected from what I thought this movie was going to be. I just kind of hated it. I was just like, this is dumb. But then after I saw, Evil Dead 2, and then saw Army of Darkness again, then I could appreciate it. Then I'm like, oh, cool. It's funny because a lot of the things that I write and that I run today are probably more like Army of Darkness than they are the first 2 Evil Dead films.
Yeah.
Because rather than something being like sparse and like drawn out and like bleak and whatever, I like to inject humor and stuff whenever I can, whenever it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. If it's a straight up horror Lovecraft thing, then maybe there won't be much humor at all. But if it's fantasy or even sci-fi, I like to laugh, and I like it to be humorous if it can be. And so Army of Darkness is just like Big Trouble in Little China. That's another big one that I watched constantly growing up, and I love today. That's kind of my jam. I'll do serious things every once in a while, but I would rather do things that are cool and also funny at the same time.
I think it's been a while since I've read it, but I think Revelry in Torth is one of your more serious, if I remember correctly. I think that's pretty.
Yeah. There aren't a lot of laughs in Revelry and Torth. That's
Sword and Sorcery.
Yeah, Liberation, kind of flirts with humor at times.
Grim dark humor, kind of.
Yeah. Purple Islands has a little bit of humor. Revelry and Torth, I kind of backed away a little bit, trying to be a little more serious maybe. And then after that, it was like the original Crimson Dragon Slayer, and then Alpha Blue, and then I was just like, you know what, I should go with the humor thing because that's innately me, and also that's a niche that you don't find a lot, and so maybe that's
you're
an audience that they're not getting from somewhere else.
You're finding your style, it's kind of
right, because there's so many directions you can go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be pigeonholed to just one thing. And then when you're starting out, you're finding your style and your groove. You try a few different things, and then eventually you come to like, this is truly like Venger Satanis. Like if you were to create like a Venger Satanis type of situation or encounter or module.
What would Venger do?
yeah. What would Venger do? And I like doing that and being true to that, because I think, because going back to Metallica, like, you don't want Metallica to suddenly sound like some other band. I mean, they constantly, at least early, sound like Metallica, but that's a good thing. Winger can sound like Winger, and Slayer can sound like Slayer. Metallica could, you don't try to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
You try, you find kind of your direction, your niche, and then you just do your best in that area. You stay in your lane, maybe you cross the lane here and there a little bit, but mostly you stay in your lane and you perfect and keep going with whatever you want to do, and let the other guy worry about being the next big thing, or being more grimdark, or being more epic fantasy, or being more sci-fi horror, those are all great things, but I'm at a point now where I kind of want to keep doing like Chult, definitely, and then I'll still always love Alpha Blue, like that direction. Like, that just seems more me, and since hardly anybody is doing that sort of thing, I kind of want to stick to that, because then I can go in that direction, and I don't have like a ton of competition with, sleazy sci-fi, or
there's not much competition. There's not a whole lot of competition in that.
Yeah. There's some competition. There's a lot of people doing Gonzo stuff or science fantasy,
mm-hmm.
or post-apocalyptic, but they usually don't put it all together, or they have a different approach. Maybe it's not as funny, or it's not laden with pop culture references as my work is. So
you kind of mentioned going from like a Revelry and Torth to kind of like Alpha Blue, which is kind of, they're both like kind of on almost opposite sides.
Yeah.
Was that like a response to that more conservative take where you're like, I gotta let this out, or where did the initial idea come from for Alpha Blue?
Someone had suggested, this is a G+ thread that Zach S started like, a billion years ago. And he was looking for people to post ideas that a certain publisher would want to pursue, and then along that, like an artist's name that could do it justice artistically, I guess, like the illustration work. And someone in that giant thread had listed me and said, like, oh, it'd be cool if Venger did some sort of like Barbarella, like, low budget sci-fi, like post Star Wars sci-fi, kind of cheesy stuff, but had like tits and ass, and it was kind of sleazy or raunchy or juvenile, like that kind of humor. And I thought about it. I'm like, well, I do like science fiction, and there's so many science fiction games out there, and I was like, this is kind of a little area where nobody's really doing that. So that's something I could do. And I was thinking like how influenced I've been by movies like Ice Pirates and Flash Gordon. And I mean, there's been a ton of porn parodies with science fiction. So you can incorporate that too. And just like there's, if you look at scour the internet, there's some weird Star Wars knockoff, like either soft or hardcore porn films that you've probably never seen, but they like exist somewhere. And that's like a whole genre. And I'm like, oh, I could like do that. And so I tried it with Alpha Blue. At first, I was just going to do like the space station. Like Alpha Blue is a space station brothel that kind of like moves around the universe a little bit. I mean, it's mostly stationary, but it'll can or eventually will go to different galaxies or systems or whatever. And then as I was writing it, I was like, you know what? I kind of want something a little more complete. And I had the D6 dice pool system from Crimson Dragon Slayer. And I thought, well, maybe I could port that over, and then I could try it out. And I play tested it a few times, and it seemed really cool. And so I put the role-playing game, attached the rules to the Alpha Blue setting, and it kind of became its own role-playing game. And I was like, that's awesome. And so I released that. That did well. And it kind of drove me to write adventures and come up with a couple source books with like new ideas and new random tables and stuff like that. And it just kind of snowballed. And for like 2 or 3 years, in 2 or 3 years, I put out probably like 15 different Alpha Blue related titles or adventures or something. Until I was just kind of done. I needed a break. And I wanted to do something a little bit more mainstream and go back to my fantasy roots a little bit more. And that's where Chalt came up. But yeah, still love Alpha Blue. Would like to do more of it eventually. Maybe one day do like a fancy full color hardcover of Alpha Blue like I did with Chalt. Someday that'd be really cool. That's probably at least a few years off, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were going to continue doing stuff for Alpha Blue. Didn't you have something where you said you were going to make the final supplement for it or something like that? Wasn't there?
Yeah. I the one before, sort of the one before the last one, I was like, this is probably a good time to end it. I was like, this is the last one, and I called it that, like the last Alpha Blue supplement, something like that. And then I was like, maybe I'll just do one more, and then I didn't kickstart it, and I didn't turn it into a print-on-demand book, but I did do 3 short PDF adventures. The first called Thought Audit, and then
it's a Thought Audit.
Yeah, Thoughts. Audit.
Yeah, I wanted to get that across.
With the THOT.
Yeah.
Thoughts. And then the Thought Police, and then the last one I believe was a credit for your thoughts, like THOT.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last. Those are the last Alpha Blue things I've done. But then I incorporated a little bit of Alpha Blue into Chalt. Like there's this cantina in Chalt, kind of in the middle of the wasteland a little bit, called the Gamma Incel Cantina. And that's got a lot of Chalt. That's got a lot of Alpha Blue in it. but otherwise, Alpha Blue is kind of on the back burner until, I don't know, sometime in the near future I'll get back into it more. But for right now, that kind of style peaks itself out every once in a while in the Chult campaign.
Yeah, so I guess we are building towards what you're really kind of currently working on, which is your Chult. Can we call it a trilogy? Is it going to be a trilogy, or are you gonna?
Yeah, that's the goal. And there's always that small chance that I never get the third book done, or that I keep going. I do the fourth book in the trilogy, or quadrology or whatever, or I just keep going for some reason. Like, people just keep throwing money at me, and I'm like, okay, if this is that successful, I'll keep doing it.
All your Kickstarters have been really successful, like far surpassed their goals.
I try to put very modest goals. Like, someone was doing a Kickstarter for the first time, and they put it at like $48,000. I'm like, that's optimistic. Okay. Sometimes I'll put a starting goal of like $1,000. Now, I'm hoping that it gets much more than $1,000. $1,000 is just like the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially if you want to do like print on demand and shipping it out, and it's like a certain length where it makes sense to do that. It's hard to do anything properly for $1,000. I mean, you could cover all your costs, but then you're not making any money. So you really need it to make like a few $1,000s. And if you're doing a hardcover book, like I did with Chult and Chult Fiche Malaise, you need multiple thousands of dollars. And I was kind of stuck in the middle. And so with Chult, I used my own money to finish it, because I didn't have, the Kickstarter didn't make enough money to do it the way I wanted to do it. And so I borrowed some money and I put in my own money, and I got it done. And then I was able to, get out from debt, which is nice, because it did sell pretty well afterwards. And then with Chult Fiche Malaise, I got almost there. I probably could have done it if I just made a print run of like $500. But again, I thought, this is maybe my only chance. Maybe I won't ever get to do a second printing. And it's cheaper a little bit if I do a print run of 1,000. That's how they get you. It's just so much sweeter.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's do 1,000. And then once that happened, and I gave the Kickstarters or the backers from the Kickstarter their books, then I'm left with 700 books that I need to sell. So the current Kickstarter, Saving Chult, which is between books 2 and 3, is just some one-off adventures that in PDF that I'm releasing. And I'm also trying to sell more hardcover books. So hopefully I'll sell more books that way. And then in 2022, I'll be in a good position to start on book number 3. And then I'll kickstart that, and hopefully that'll make enough money where I can do a nice, maybe 1,000 book print run of that and do it the way I want to, super high quality, spare no expense. And then after that, we'll see. I will see if there's any more, or maybe I'll go back to Alpha Blue after that, and then take a break on Chult. I mean, it just depends on what the fans want and how successful it is commercially, and where my head's at. If I'm inspired to do something more with Chult, I'll be more inclined to do that. If I'm more in the mood to do something more like Alpha Blue or something crazy that I haven't even come up with yet, maybe I'll do that. Just depends.
I'm always curious about Kickstarter in general, like the behind the scenes aspect of it. Like, were you cautious, and how much research did you do before you launched your first Kickstarter?
I never do a ton of research, just like I never do a ton of homework. ever. That's kind of like, if I have to, I'll do a moderate amount if I feel I have to. That's just kind of my MO ever since I was little. Like, I don't do the bare minimum, but I'm not going to kill myself to get straight A's either. I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a solid B student most of the time.
Procrastinate to the last minute. That's me for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
that's me.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
Don't procrastinate a lot, but it's nice to have something external motivating me. Like if I know I have a Kickstarter deadline, like, then that means that there's something inside of me that's like pushing me to like get this done. Or
yeah, you announce it so that everybody holds you to it that way.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people where, yeah, if someone, especially multiple people, are going to hold me to something that I said I was going to do, then by God, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to slack off and take your money to Argentina or just be like crying in my basement because I'm like, it's so hard, or something like that.
There are quite a few Kickstarters that end up that way.
But I'm one of the people that I'm going to do it. It's easier for me to push myself if other people are relying on me than if I'm just like trying to motivate myself. Like, this will be awesome. Let's just do it. There's really no accountability. I just want to do it. But if I create that accountability through the Kickstarter, through backers, people believing in me and relying on me, then I'm absolutely going to do it. So that motivates me. That inspires me to do it. And that's one of the things I like about Kickstarter, which is why I don't go into Kickstarter with a fully finished thing. It might be like a third of the way done. I might have a great idea and like an outline. Maybe it's like half done, but not any more than that, because I want to see where things are going financially. Like if I get 1,500, like let's say I start a Kickstarter for $1,000 and it gets up to 1,500 by the end. Well, that's going to change my approach than if this thing made $8,000 or, Cthulhu willing, tentacles crossed, one day, $80,000. That's going to change the whole scope of everything. And so I don't want to go in with a finished product because like I said, it's hard to motivate myself to do it if it's just me. Because if I was running a game, let's say I had a game that I'd prepare for next week, I would like take half of a sheet of paper. I would just like scribble some notes on like one side and maybe like a list of 5 names on the other side, and then draw a little picture, and boom, that's 4 hours of game done. But if I'm going to create something for someone else to run, then I'm going to take my time. It's going to take weeks. I'm going to write 8 to 10 pages. I'm going to clearly have like bullet points and a random table or two, and everything's going to look nice and neat and easy to find. So I do that for other people, and of course I can use that myself. I'd rather have something nice and laid out rather than half a sheet of paper guiding me, even though I can. So yeah, I can't remember where I was going with
we were talking about kind of, I guess, the aches and pains of Kickstarter a little bit.
Yeah, there's always things that come up, like there's layout that takes more time, or I don't know. Finding art can be tedious. Like if I'm trolling DeviantArt pages, just scrolling through shit until I find something I like, and then I contact that artist and ask them if I can license that piece, or if they can I can commission them something in the next few weeks. And then I'll go back to scrolling page after page after page after page, looking, and I'll be like, oh, I like that. And then I'll ask that artist the same thing. Sometimes I'll do that for a couple hours a day for like a week. And maybe half of the artists get back to me and like, yeah, I can license it to you for like $100 or $200. And then boom, after a week or two, I found all the art I need for that project. So that's kind of behind the scenes Kickstarter thing that can be annoying, but it can also be rewarding.
What are the fees like that Kickstarter charges? Are they
Between the collecting and the distribution, all told, they take about 9%. So if you look at it compared to Drive-Thru RPG, Drive-Thru RPG I think takes 30%. So obviously 9% is better than 30%.
Yeah.
And then when you're all done, the government takes, however much they want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you really got to factor all that in when you're setting up your goals and stuff. But like you said, I think you've, at least recently, I've seen most of yours at 1,000. I think you did a couple at 500, correct?
I might have, if it was PDF only, yeah.
Yeah. Like you did that set of 3 adventures, I think, like the Cerulean Keep, or is that what it was called? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't think I've ever had a Kickstarter that didn't fund, just because I always am worried about that in the back of my head. So I keep it kind of a low initial amount. I'm hoping that, it's gonna, one day I gotta have one of these breakthroughs where my Kickstarter is gonna make like 50,000 or 500,000, like some of those Kickstarters. And it just, part of you, it makes you sick because you're like, I've been busting my ass. Like, dude, this is my 19th Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like, where's my big break? But I'm happy to be the slow ass turtle, slow and steady, just like doing his thing. Because what other choice do I have? I don't have cybernetic like rabbit legs that I can just like ratchet on and just be like, all right, it's go time. Woo! Make up $1,000. I have what I have, and I gotta play my hand the best I can. That's all there is, And in the meantime, though, I try to market and promote stuff like a son of a bitch, trying to make things happen, because I know that things just don't happen. Sometimes they do, but a lot of things that seem handed to you, it's because you put in a lot of work ahead of time. So I try to put in that work. I try to make it more realistic that good things will happen. But yeah, I'm still waiting for that really big break where Kickstarter makes, well over $10,000.
Yeah,
like which is about the limit for me. I think 11 or 12,000. One of the 12 Kickstarters made. That's the best I've ever done with Kickstarter. But one day, I'm pretty confident. One of my Kickstarters will just go gangbusters, and who knows what will happen then. I still won't go to Argentina with your money. Don't worry about that. But I don't know. I could make a lot of really cool creative shit for like $50,000. I could make a role playing game book that will take you in the back and suck your dick. That's how good I can make a role playing game book for $50,000.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, I'd go about 15% for that. Another favorite of mine, Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, that's another really good one.
Yeah.
So you've done a number of like game systems. You've done like you did that strictly post-apocalyptic. You've done the vampire setting. You've done the OSR, like we were talking about, Crimson Dragon Slayer.
Yeah.
The sleazy, 80s Alpha Blue. Do you have any more in you? You think you'll do another system at some point, or?
I don't know. I'd be happy just writing.
Or you ever plan on doing like maybe like a
already?
I was gonna say like
Never say never.
yeah, like a second edition Alpha Blue or something along those lines, maybe.
I could. I think if I did that, if I did like a big fancy full color hardcover of Alpha Blue, well, if it was full color, I'd have to get all new artwork because it's all black and white now. But that would be a lot of fun, finding and commissioning that. If I had the money, I could just throw a lot of that money at the artists and be like, just create like so much awesome, movie like science fiction movie art with like all kinds of girls and all kinds of like lasers and sexual positions and just go crazy, full color crazy. Like, here's a bunch of money, like go do that, make it awesome, and then give it to me and I'll put it in the book, and then that'll be awesome. And some things from other supplements, like I'd probably just do Alpha Blue. Like I do Alpha Blue, and I would maybe incorporate the best parts of like Girls Gone Rogue or Universal Exploits, or maybe some of the later adventures that have parts of the like other like optional mechanics that I created, or other random tables, or maybe scenarios in the back. I don't know. I mean, I would really do it up. But yeah, I'd be happy just doing stuff for Alpha Blue or Chalt. I don't really need to create a new system. I think the last new system I created that wasn't a revision of a previous one, like Crimson Dragon Slayer, would be the vampire one, Blood Dark Thirst.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never got super motivated to create anything more for that. Like adventures, I tried, and it just kind of fell apart. It wasn't up to my own personal standard as I was writing the outline or getting the first 2 pages in. And so I would just abandon it and think like, well, maybe I'll be more motivated in a couple months, and then maybe I'll try it again, and it just never happened. So maybe I'm done with the systems, and maybe I just want to create content now for the stuff I love, like Alpha Blue and Chalt, Crimson Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. So do you have like let's say like an elevator pitch for people who have no idea what Chalt is?
The way I describe it is eldritch, gonzo, science fantasy, post-apocalyptic campaign setting that's usable with all forms of D&D, like basic D&D, 2nd edition, 5th edition. So it's compatible with all that. So yeah, all those little buzzwords. I mean, you can find pieces of that in Chalt. Chalt takes place after there was a war between like the more sci-fi elements, like the civilization that had lasers and robots and starships and communicated and traded with other planets in other galaxies. And then the old ones who were there in the beginning and then were sleeping for a while and then awoke to realize that the rest of the world had kind of left them behind. And so they were just pissed that nobody bothered to even like, not only was nobody worshiping them, like nobody barely remembered the old ones. They were like, fuck that shit. And then they just like lay waste to most of the planet. And now the reconstruction is happening. And so that's called Chalt now. So there's everything. There's like old high-tech artifacts that you can dredge up from the sand. And there's like a dome city, and so there's remnants. There's in one of the bigger cities, there is like a spaceport where starships can like come in and things like that. And you can find like lasers and stuff like that. But also a lot of it is sword and sorcery and a lot of worship of the old ones. Hedonistic and brutal, like cults and nomads and weird devil creatures and monsters and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of the background of Chult. And then, of course, with all the material that I create for it, I try to inject some humor and every once in a while some risque exploitation or sleazy kind of stuff. And as you can probably tell, it's very Lovecraftian with the old ones and the tentacled creatures and all that stuff. So yeah, that's basically the elevator pitch, I guess, plus some for Chult. There's a lot in there that's been compared to like rifts and other things that kind of incorporate a lot of like kitchen sink elements. It's been compared to Carcosa, but Carcosa is more gonzo because it's more of a sense of humor, more pop culture references and things like that. Whereas Carcosa is pretty grim and dark, but also science fantasy. It's got sci-fi elements and fantasy combined. But you wouldn't really call Carcosa gonzo. But Chult is very gonzo. There's a lot of weird, funny things like that. There's someone that put out, because there's that Muppet TV show that they're doing with Dungeons and Dragons, and someone created, I think not for that, I think way before, like a race of creatures that you can play in D&D 5th edition. So it was like official, but you could play like a Muppet, and there's like a religion where it's like the person's hand up your body or whatever. And I'm thinking like that would actually go well with Chult, because Chult is just, it's cool and silly and zany, as well as being like a real, because it's a parody, but it's also like a real setting that isn't all jokes and funny stuff and like the Kool-Aid man like bursting out of the dungeon wall like, hey, I'm the Kool-Aid man, or whatever he says. It's like legit D&D gameable stuff that's not just fun and games and silliness. And there's some real stakes and save or die stuff and factions and legit monsters and magic items and whatever else. So it's so wide open that I feel comfortable creating stuff for it and running it, because I never run out of ideas, and I never feel pigeonholed or like I can't lean into the science fiction or the horror or something because the setting won't allow it. Chult allows pretty much everything, and that's one of the things I like about it, is that it's like no holds barred. I can just go in almost any kind of direction, and it works. It doesn't break the world or the system, or like the campaign setting. It all works.
I think one of my favorite bits from Chult is the old ones carcasses that are laying in the desert, and the blood trickled and created the what is it, the Chartreuse, or what's the name of the river?
Chartreuse Sea.
Yeah, the Chartreuse Sea. Yeah. And that the blood kind of basically kind of like reinvigorated the magic in the planet. Yeah, it's so cool.
Thank you.
Like a lot of times when I like read your stuff, I almost never run anything by the book.
Yeah.
But I'll take the bits and the pieces, because that's the one thing that I think you do really well, is like you write things that are so I guess I'll say modular, that like I could take bits and pieces of it and put it into anybody can put into their own game really easily.
Yeah, everything is very lightly glued on, so you can like pop it off and then move it to your other thing without the whole thing breaking. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you realize that or recognize that because it's definitely a design goal that I have because I do that myself. I'll take even if I'm running Crimson Dragon Slayer, I might want a copy of DCC there for the Mercurial Magic table. And then if I'm running like Keep on the Borderlands, I might also want my Carcosa book there. And I might also want How to Game Master Like a Fucking Boss because it's got some tables in the back that, like the D100 table for colors. I mean, some people like RPG Pundit rips on that. Like, what do you need 100 different colors for? Like in a random table? Like, really? But I use that shit all the time. I'll be like, okay, through this magic mirror on the other side, you see the sword sticking out of a skull or something like that, and it appeared to be magical. And the player's like, is it glowing? I'm like, yeah, it is glowing. And they're like, what color is it? I could just say something like green. But isn't it more fun to like, let's see, like take your dice, roll them, and be like, it's mauve or it's crimson, but with flecks of gold, or whatever the hell. I use that all the time. So whenever I'm running something, I usually like to have my copy of How to Game Master Like a Fucking Boss right there with me. But I do that with a lot of things, a lot of game books, just for inspiration, or if you need something from somewhere, it's just nice to have. Yeah,
a lot of times with those random tables, I won't roll on them, but I'll look at them and like whatever I think is the coolest or whatever is on there, I'll just that okay, it's this.
Yeah. Sometimes you're about to roll, and you're like, your eyes just land on something. You're like, oh, that's perfect. I'm not gonna bother rolling. I'm just gonna use this. Then you're inspired right there. So perfect.
Yeah, I was gonna say even with Chalt, like you just want to take the pyramid itself and just plop it into the middle of like the forest or something crazy. It works. Perfect.
Yeah. It is because it's self-contained. You can do that anywhere. You can put the Black Pyramid of Chalt in Carcosa. You could put it in the middle of one of the Purple Islands. You could put it
Hyperborea.
Hyperborea, exactly. I suppose you could do Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realms or Dark Sun. It'd be perfect in Dark Sun.
Yeah, it would be perfect in Dark Sun.
Or whatever established campaign setting Dungeon Core Classics uses. You could do that. Or your own homegrown setting. Like if you don't want the rest of your setting to be all like, you got my chocolate, my peanut butter. No! You want to keep your lasers, your wizards separate. If you include the Black Pyramid, when they're in the Black Pyramid, you could play with all that stuff and combine it together, which is kind of neat. And then outside of the Black Pyramid, your setting can be pure epic fantasy or sword and sorcery, but without the protocol droids and thermal detonators and what have you.
Yeah, so you've got Chalt, you got Fuchsia Malaise, and now you're doing the Saving Chalt Kickstarter right now that we talked about. Right. Do you have? I'm sure you have an idea of what direction you're going with the third book. How formulated is that idea kicking around in your head?
The seeds are always there. Because even now with the new Kickstarter and the adventures I'm writing for Chalt, I've got Chalt on the brain, and so I'm always thinking about that sort of world and what might be in there and how it can be expanded or how I can drill deeper into it. I'd kind of like to do another mega dungeon, maybe. Yeah, obviously different than the Black Pyramid. This would probably be more like a legit dungeon, like going down. like multi-layers down. So that's an idea. I want to revisit like the old gods that are either dead or maybe still sleeping. Like maybe do like a dungeon, like inside, kind of like what I did with the purple demon worm, but like multiple different old ones where there's like areas that are like rooms, and then PCs can explore that. I don't know. Specifically, I don't have like one definite gimmick or concept that I'm going to go whole hog with, like throughout the book, or it's going to dominate the book. I've got a lot of little ideas that it's so long of a ways off. It's like probably at least a year off. So I'm not going to, kill myself thinking about it now or trying to get it perfect now, because
you probably got
our future ideas, and they will come eventually. And then when they do, I will grab them and just start writing it down at the time.
Yeah, so I guess that's probably a good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
We're about a little over hour going in here.
It's almost my bedtime.
Yeah, we've got as we mentioned, Saving Chalt is on Kickstarter right now, $5, and I think right now you're at about 3 or 4 adventures, and the more money that he gets, the more adventures we'll get. For $5, and
Right.
if you want to get Chalt or Chalt Fuchsia Malaise, those the physical copies, you can get either one or both at the highest pledge level. Where else can they find you at, Venger?
You can find me at Venger's Old School Gaming Blog. You can just Google that.
I'll put all the links in the description.
Yeah, it's on Blogger. So I try to blog like maybe once a week. Cool things that are happening with role-playing games, and just whatever's going on with me, or whoever has my attention that week, I'll blog about. Also, one of the co-hosts on Inappropriate Characters. That's our monthly live stream role-playing game talk show podcast thing that I do with RPG Pundit and Joe Bittman. But yeah, you can find me on Drive Through RPG, Kort'thalis Publishing. It has like 50 some titles now, everything from 1 or 2 page PDFs to 218 page books like Chalt. Yeah, every once in a while I do videos on YouTube. You can just Google Venger Satanis and you'll probably find me eventually.
Yeah, I'll link it, and I'll hook them all up down in the description. Yeah. All right. Well, Venger, thanks for coming on, and
thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, man. It's good talking to you.
You too.
Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you guys again real soon.